We still have the final cleanup of that accident after the point, blocking the HOV lane, plus a crash at 2800 West, about 3600 South. Win a Tempur-Pedic mattress and adjustable base this weekend at the grand opening of Snooze Mattress Company in Pleasant Grove. You must be present to win, and the giveaway is not sponsored by KSL. Come experience the Snooze Mattress exclusive dream mapping technology. Get mapped, get fitted, get sleep. Ricky Meese in the KSL Traffic Center.
KSL weather. We could see more afternoon thunderstorms today. It's going to be hot with a high of 99. Dries out through the rest of the week with highs climbing to 103 by Saturday. There is a chance for more rain Monday and Tuesday. And right now, we're pretty hot already, 96 degrees and partly cloudy at KSL News Radio, 102.7 FM, 1160 AM, and KSLNewsRadio.com. Your all-day companion for news.
Inside Sources. Inside Sources. America's voice of reason. Boyd Matheson on Utah's home for elevated conversation. Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
Every year, Congress needs to pass a bill called the National Defense Authorization Act, or NDAA. This annual bill provides the funding for our national military. It's one of Congress's most basic and important duties. But beyond national military priorities, is there anything in the bill that benefits Utah? Let's begin.
Think you know the news of the day? Think again with Boyd Matheson on KSL News Radio.
Well, it's easy to get lost in the headline of a National Defense Authorization Act, thinking that has nothing to do with any of us that live here in the state of Utah, but it turns out there's quite a few things in there that do impact us directly. Senator Mitt Romney has been in the middle of a lot of the conversations leading up to the shaping and crafting and some of the amendments that will be part of the NDAA this year, and he joins us on the line from our nation's capital. Senator, welcome back to the show.
Thanks, Boyd. Good to be with you.
I know this is a very busy week leading into, we refuse to call it August recess. We know it's the in-state work period, and we know there's a lot of things happening there. But give us a sense of what's happening, and then we'll dig into some of the specific priorities related to Utah that you're working on in the bill.
Well, I think it's critically important for us to show that we can work on a bipartisan basis to actually pass a bill that authorizes funding for our military and for key military projects. And that appears to be on track to happen, which is good news. And there are a number of measures, as you point out, that I've authored that are part of this legislation, others that will be amendments of mine that will be part of the legislation. So we're going to have an impact for Utah as well as the nation as a whole.
So important. Let's go into some of those in particular. I know one of the elements that you've been working on deals with Dugway Proving Ground. Give us a sense of that.
Yeah, I don't know that a lot of people in Utah know what Dugway is, but it's a center of research which is held out, if you will, in the desert, the west desert of Utah, where research is done on biological weapon defense. So how we defend against chemical and biological weapons. So it's a very critical place for our investment, and it has been hampered by a series of regulations that make it difficult for them to get the funding they need to expand their facilities and to maintain them. And Senator Lee and I have been able to get a section of the bill which provides for funding going forward for Dugway and knocks down some of these regulations that have made it hard to get funding in the past.
Yeah, some really crucial pieces there for sure. I also want to get into some of these others that may be lesser known to some of the folks here in the state. One in particular is addressing a real critical need in the military, and that is recruiting. Obviously, having the man and women power we need is absolutely vital to the national security.
Well, one of the strange things is that, now and then you get some colleges and maybe some high schools as well that are not wild about the military. I don't quite understand why that is. We all want freedom, but you have to realize that to have freedom, we have to have a strong military to protect ourselves. And so sometimes these colleges and universities don't give military recruiters access to campus for recruiting purposes. And so this piece of legislation, which I was able to draft and get co-sponsored by a Democrat and Republican. It allows our military recruiters to have access to high schools and colleges to make sure that they'll be able to sell careers in the military to our young people, and they can make an informed decision as to whether or not they want to sign up.
Yeah, so important. One that most people wouldn't think about in the context of national defense, but many people have been dealing with. Simply trying to get a passport these days has become very difficult. You've been working on a piece, again, within this NDAA that actually would help address some of that backlog as it relates to getting a passport.
Well, you are absolutely right, and I can't tell you there are hundreds, if not thousands, of requests that come to my office and the offices of the other members of our delegation asking for help getting a passport, saying, "Oh boy, we're going on vacation in 2 months to some foreign land, and we can't get our passport renewed or a new one issued. Can you help us?" And one of the reasons it's so slow is that we don't have a passport office in Utah. And so sometimes we have to send people to Los Angeles or Atlanta to meet with someone and to be able to accelerate their passport process. So this piece of legislation is designed to put pressure on the State Department, pointing out just how many people need passports from Utah and from other parts of the country, how far they have to go, how long the wait is for them. And by virtue of having that information, we believe it will lead to finally getting in an office in Salt Lake City. That's the intent, and hopefully we'll get there.
That would be fantastic. Utah obviously is becoming not just a nice crossroads to the west, but a real crossroads to the world. And I know all of the delegation offices and all of the constituent services folks, the caseworkers, spend so much time just going through hoops and backflips and backlogs to get people their passports and go through that process, and being able to have something here in the state, I think would be definitely a step in the right direction. But we do have to give a shout out to those caseworkers and those office staff folks in all of the congressional offices. It's often the hard work and heavy lifting behind the scenes that really helps the people of the state of Utah.
No question about that, and something that people don't know, but is something they should know. And I wish our State Department did a better job communicating this. But there are many, many countries which will not allow you to go into their country if your passport is set to expire within 6 months. So you might have a passport that let's say it expires in 4 months, and you want to go to Mexico for a wedding, let's say, in Mexico City. And you're not allowed to go into Mexico, even though your passport's valid, because they won't allow you to come in because your passport expires within 6 months. This legislation also directs the State Department to make that very clear on the passport, that the passport will not be accepted within 6 months of its expiration date within numerous countries.
Now let's shift gears and head over to a place that a lot of us do lock into when it comes to defense, and that's dealing with China. You have something specific in the NDAA relating to exposing China's defense spending. Give us a sense of that.
Well, pretty simply, which is every time I read a newspaper article that says that we vastly outspend China in our military, it drives me nuts because I know that's not accurate. One, China doesn't report all of their military spending the way we do, so we don't compare apples and oranges in the accounting. Number two, we pay a lot of money for our men and women, our fighting men and women, and we have them with good compensation. We have huge benefits for veterans and so forth. They don't have that same level of burden. And so if you look at how much we're actually spending on weaponry, the procurement of weapons for our military, it's about 15% of our spending. I mean, I think most people would assume it's like 50%. No, it's 15%.
Wow.
And so I want to get an accurate assessment of what China is spending on weapons and compare that to our own. So we're directing the Department of Defense to finally gather and publish a comparable analysis of what they're spending on things that, well, could attack us.
So important. Finally, Senator, before I let you go, I know it's a busy day back there, but I do want to go to one other component, bipartisan work, focusing on critical mineral independence. This is one, again, between supply chains and adversaries like China, like Russia. We've got to really look at some of those crucial minerals in a different way. Tell us what your proposal does in that space.
Yes, I have a piece of legislation which has been included in the act, which helps get us if you will, a secure source of critical minerals that we need for our military defense. And we really haven't thought about that as effectively as we should have as a nation. As the world goes electric, why obviously people say, oh gosh, we need more cobalt, we need more lithium, and that's true with regards to for batteries and commercial uses. But military uses, we need our military to stop and say, hey, wait, we shouldn't be sourcing these things from China or from nations that are hostile to America. We should be able to source everything we need to defend our country from free countries. And this legislation requires the Department of Defense to achieve a critical mineral supply chain which is independent from China, Russia, and other adversaries.
All right, and then I'm going to shift gears one last time with you, Senator, real quickly, just a quick perspective in terms of what's happening in Ukraine and what comes next.
I know we're getting limited information about exactly how the conflict is going on the ground. I think you have to recognize that, one, in 1994, we agreed to acknowledge and protect Ukraine's sovereignty. Russia agreed to do the same thing. They tore that up. But people look to America to honor our word, and that's one of the reasons why we're supplying weaponry to them. Secondly, we're supplying weaponry to Ukrainians because by virtue of doing so, we are decimating the military of Russia. And Russia is not a friend. It's got 1,500 nuclear bombs aimed at us. And it's an ally of China. So weakening Russia is a good thing for us, and we're doing that without losing any American lives. So we're on track to continue to support Ukraine in their effort, and I must admit that I'm sure it's not a perfect country, but it's a heck of a lot better than Putin's Russia.
No question about that. Utah Senator Mitt Romney joining us from Washington, D.C. Of course, the NDAA, the National Defense Authorization Act, in the middle of things this week. Senator, good luck as you continue to work in a bipartisan fashion to get that wrapped up before the in-state work period or recess come August. Thanks for joining us today.
Thanks, Boyd. Good to be with you.
All right. Important perspective there from Utah Senator Mitt Romney. Again, a lot of times we don't really think about the impact of a national defense bill, but it does impact us right here at home, everything from Dugway to passports and everything in between. But it's important to get beyond just the headlines and the partisan pieces of that and get down to those things that everybody agrees on. This is one of the few things that are required of Congress to get done every year per the Constitution, which is a pretty good thing for us to follow. We'll be right back.
Think again on Inside Sources with Boyd Matheson. When news breaks early in the morning.
The explosion occurred around 5:30 this morning.
2 people injured in an explosion at a chemical plant.
Some normal operation going on here with some individuals working on a tank.
KSL reporters race to the scene.
There's no ongoing risk to the public.
Get breaking news and the top stories. Utah's Morning News with Tim and Amanda.
We do have a reporter on the scene, and we'll have more for you coming up.
Weekdays 5 to 9 on KSL News Radio.
As I look at my path to the NFL, I wouldn't have been able to do it by myself. Having a supporting cast for me made all the difference, both on and off the field. And the thing I realized this last year was having that supporting cast made my dreams and my goals a reality. I prepare as best as I can for every situation on the football field. You know, that same mindset applies to me as a husband, as a dad. And being a new father with an 8-month-old child, I've realized that, you know, I now have a responsibility to my son and to my wife, just like I do my teammates. I spend all my time being a quarterback, and I need to find people that I can trust and rely upon. Deseret First Credit Union, they are those people that are spending all that time to help me manage and take care of my family. My name is Taysom Hill, and my why is faith, family, and football.
Do you have an IRA or 401k? It's natural to think of this as being your money, right? But remember, you still have to pay taxes when you withdraw this money in retirement. And you could be paying a lot more in taxes on these accounts than you know. A lot more. Learn the strategies that can help you reduce or eliminate your taxes in retirement. Don't miss a special edition of Retirement Solutions Radio this Saturday afternoon at 3 o'clock. right here on KSL News Radio 1027.
You know, in Box Elder County, they're all about the bucket list. Want to go birding at the premier birding destination in the western United States? Well, check off the Bear River Migratory Bird Refuge. How about land art? The spiral jetty and sun tunnels will leave you inspired. Or stand on the spot where the Union and Central Pacific Railroads joined and forged the destiny of a nation. Yep, Golden Spike National Historical Park is like no other place. Check. Splash, boat, camp, or fish your day away? Willard Bay State Park will guarantee a good time. Soak in a natural hot spring with the highest mineral content in the world? That would be Crystal Hot Springs. You'll feel rejuvenated. Eat at Utah's original steakhouse. Maddox Ranch House is perfection. Check. A 1920s diner. The Idle Owl Cafe will transport you back in time. As you empty your Box Elder County bucket list, you'll find a whole new set of adventures to fill it up again. Fill up your bucket list at visitboxeldercounty.com.
Join Mike Stevens of Capital Wealth Advisors for Retire Right Radio, Saturdays at 5 a.m. and 9 p.m. That's Retire Right Radio with Mike Stevens, Saturdays at 5 a.m. and 9 p.m.
With the three things you need to know this hour, I'm Dan Bonas. First, Clearfield police are asking for help from the public to locate a dog that's been missing since its owner's car was stolen. Second, the Air Force has released the results of its investigation into an F-35 fighter crash at Hill Air Force Base last year. A problem with computerized flight controls, partly to blame. Third, Russia says it'll ship tons of grain to countries in Africa that have depended on imports from Ukraine. Right now, 96 degrees, partly cloudy in Salt Lake City. Back to Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
Get deeper insights on the news from Inside Sources.
Well, this week, Israel passed a law that will begin the overhaul of the judicial system. Protests, of course, have racked the country leading up to and in response of that vote. One of our guests, Amos Giora, told us on Monday from Israel that some think the nation is headed toward a civil war. Those who oppose the legislation are close to 60% of the country. But instead of tearing the country apart, what's the path forward for America's closest ally in the Middle East? Really pleased to have joining us back on the program today, Mark Toth, who writes on national security and foreign policy, previously an economist and entrepreneur. He's a former board member of the World Trade Center St. Louis and has lived in Israel. And Mark, welcome back to the show.
Boyd, thanks for having me.
This is one we have followed very closely. Our friend from the University of Utah, Amos Giora, has been in Israel, been part of some of these protests, has been giving us a good lay of the land and a feel on the streets in terms of how this plays out. You had a great piece today in the Messenger talking about a path forward that a lot of people probably don't even recognize, and it has to do with the Constitution and Israel. Give us a sense of that.
Sure. Yeah, Israel is kind of like England in this regard. It does not have a formal constitution. That was not by design. Originally back in 1948, the founders of the country fully intended on it, but war broke out on the same day that the UN declared them a state. Egypt, Saudi Arabia, Syria, Lebanon, all attacked, and Iraq as well. And so the idea of putting the Constitution together got set aside for reasons of war exigency. It wasn't until 1958, not too dissimilar to our own pause from the revolution in 1776, till we adopted our own Constitution here in the U.S., that Israel got around to adopting what are known as basic laws. But these basic laws, in their mind, were simply to be page holders, placeholders, however you want to put it, for ideas, concepts that they ultimately wanted to craft into a completed constitution. But 75 years later, from 1948, they're not there yet. And my argument in the Messenger is that the one way that they can heal the country is get this Constitution done. Because from a voting standpoint, the country is fairly evenly divided. 50% supported Netanyahu and his coalition in the 25th Knesset election that happened late in 2022. 49% supported the centrist parties. Those two have two very different ideas of what Israel should look like. And that's really what is at stake here in terms of the protests that are going on. And it's going to take an impartial legal construct, if you will, in the form of a constitution to guarantee the rights of both these sides. Right now, each side thinks the other is coming for them.
Yeah, and I think that's such an important thing for us to keep in mind. And you pointed this out so powerfully in your piece that these protests aren't just about the Supreme Court. It really is about the future of the country, what it should look like, what it should feel like. And so describe for us just a little bit what you think that process might look like moving forward.
Sure. The Israel that I first moved to in the middle 1970s is very different than today. It was still very much a country that had been dominated for years by the Labor Party. In traditional terms, that was more of a socialist type left coming out of Europe, the founders of the country. And they dominated people like Golda Meir, Yitzhak Rabin, Shimon Peres, and other. They dominated Israeli politics up until 1977 when Menachem Begin took over and Likud came into power. And so in terms of answering your question, ever since, however, the country has started to tilt right and away from that. And now, ironically, what once was the powerhouse of Israel, the Labor Party, is down to 4 seats in 120 member Knesset. So you can see just how far it's dropped. But what's interesting in terms of these two sides trying to come together is there's a lot of misperception on both sides, but particularly from the right. The right tends to view the opposition parties in Israel as left, as though they're the old labor socialist type parties. They're not. They really are centrist, and if they lean any way, it's slightly to the left. But these are centrist types that we would probably call independents here in the U.S. that are arguing we have this idea that Israel should be an open, liberal democracy, and not liberal in the sense of the American type of word, but liberal in the sense of, open to free-thinking thoughts, respecting rights and the like. And the right is very concerned that means they're going to lose a lot of the religious identity that they believe Israel's national identity should hook around. Yeah. So the challenge is to find a way to bring those two parties together because they have completely opposite ideas for what Israel should look like going forward.
Yeah, I think that's so interesting that if you look at that idea of pluralism, of being able to preserve things that are absolutely crucial and vital to society, being liberal or progressive, forward-moving in terms of being open, free speech, and all of those kinds of things, getting to that balance, that equilibrium as you described it, I think it is such a crucial thing, especially in that part of the world. And I think the U.S. leaning in to that in terms of what is that path forward. And what do you think the role of the U.S. could be or should be, given what's taken place over the last week? Is there a place for the Biden administration to lean in and weigh in? Or is this something we're just going to have to sit back and see how this plays out?
There is. I know Biden has been hesitant. He's got a lot on his plate to weigh in on this. But I do believe it's going to take the United States stepping into this to try to tilt this in the right direction. Your previous guest, Senator Romney, realized this as well back in last March when this was first coming to a head and protests were breaking out over the prospect of this first law being passed, or really technically an amendment to the basic law that was enacted. He called for, both sides to pause. And I think that really needs to be the message coming out of Washington, that Netanyahu, you can't proceed with this. You may have some points that are legitimate ones. The Israeli Supreme Court certainly has kind of began to act as the conscience of Israel, substituting its own opinions over the will, if you will, of the Knesset. But at the same time, half the country has come to rely upon that. So if you're going to change that equation, again, you've got to come back to a constitution that both sides feel their rights are protected. And I think that role definitely has to come from the U.S. And I can tell you from having lived there for a substantial amount of time, Israel does indeed care what the U.S. thinks of it. It thinks of, it worries about what the U.S. thinks because they realize from a military standpoint we're the strategic lifeline. And without that umbrella of U.S. protection overall, they are an isolated island in a very hostile part of the world.
Yeah, great perspective as always. Mark Toth, of course, writes on national security and foreign policy. Great piece on Israel and the idea of a written constitution as part of that equilibrium that will bring the country together and, again, be an important ally and strategic piece there in the Middle East. Mark, thanks so much for joining us today.
Boyd, thank you so much. Take care.
All right. Great perspective there from Mark Toth as it relates to Israel. And it sounds very familiar to a certain country that we all happen to live in. Constitution does ground things. It gives specifics. It gives that equilibrium so that all rights, the rights of all, are actually protected. We'll step aside for quick bottom of the hour news. We'll be right back.
It's 1:30 at KSL News Radio. I'm Dan Bonas. KSL's top story this hour: Clearfield police looking for help in locating a missing dog caught in a carjacking turned dog napping. KSL News Radio's Eric Cabrera has more.
Clearfield's Dee Thorell was carjacked Sunday at her local Maverick with her beloved Shih Tzu Rio inside. When police recovered her abandoned car a couple days later, Rio was nowhere to be found. Detectives are asking anyone who has information on the brown and white Shih Tzu Rio's whereabouts or who've had contact with Melissa Rush to reach out to Clearfield Police.
Our top national story this hour from ABC News. An apparent military coup has taken place in the West African nation of Niger. Now, during today's press briefing at the U.S. State Department, Principal Deputy Spokesperson Vedant Patel called the situation there fluid.
The situation remains fluid. We are monitoring the situation closely and continue to be in close touch with the embassy in Niamey.
U.S. military personnel have been on the ground in Niger supporting the civilian government there. Your money at this moment, the Dow Jones average slipping down 230 points at this hour. NASDAQ also down on the day, about 64 points right now. And our KSL weather, well, yeah, we're going to see possibly another thunderstorm this afternoon. That's next. KSL News Time, 1:31.
What do you need to hear in the morning to feel ready for the day?
Important news that happened overnight, the traffic you'll hit on the roads.
You'll be ready for your day with us.
Join Utah's Morning News 5 to 9 on KSL News Radio.
In the never have I ever category, never have I ever been asked if soda weight loss works. Why? Because the results don't lie. People see the difference, but more importantly, I feel the difference. I lost 37 pounds in just 90 days. I'm 20 months down the track, still 37 pounds down. The pounds and inches fell off because Soda weight loss works. It's SOTA, stands for state-of-the-art weight loss, because it is state-of-the-art, and the results don't lie. So you don't have to be asked that question because you have your own coach and mentor, nutritionist to help you along the way. You do it all over the phone. You can do it anywhere in the world. I even lost weight on a cruise. I lost weight in Hawaii, even traveling for business. And so it doesn't lie. It works. And if you're after results, if you're tired of where you are from a health standpoint, now's the time to change. Check it out at sotaweightloss.com. It's SOTA weightloss.com.
With the economy the way it is, you're probably staying put. So invest in your home, your number one asset, with beautiful custom replacement windows from Advanced Window Products. They're a local Utah company building beautiful vinyl framed and insulated double pane windows for 37 years right here in Salt Lake City. Advanced Window Products will save you money on your energy bill. Get security features to keep your family safe. And at Advanced Window Products, it's all custom. And the best part? They're local. They build the windows, they install the windows, and they guarantee them for life. So there's no middleman markup. You save on the highest quality windows in Utah. Plus, Rocky Mountain and Dominion offer rebates. For a limited time, they offer 60-month 0% financing. And right now, get $2,000 off 10 windows or more. They're working 8 weeks out. So make the call now. Advanced Window Products, 801-850-9100. That's 801-850-9100, or visit AdvancedWindowsUSA.com.
Getting help with electrical repairs is easier than you think. All you have to do is call Any Hour Services or schedule an appointment at anyhourservices.com. No one helps more homeowners than Any Hour Services.
Traffic and weather together, brought to you by Granite Credit Union's high-yield savings certificates. Here's Ricky Meese.
We have the final cleanup of this accident in Lehi, southbound I-15. It's after the point of the mountain, but before SR 92 Temp Highway, and still affecting that left lane of travel. It's over on the shoulder, but a tight squeeze, so continue to use a little caution passing that. Ricky Meese in the KSL Traffic Center.
KSL weather, we could see some more afternoon thunderstorms today. It'll be hot with a high around 99, and it dries out through the rest of the week with highs climbing up to 103 by Saturday. There is a chance for more rain Monday and Tuesday. Pretty hot right now, 96 degrees, partly cloudy at KSL News Radio, 102.7 FM, 1160 AM, and KSLNewsRadio.com. Your all-day companion for news.
Inside Sources.
Inside Sources.
America's voice of reason. Boyd Matheson. On Utah's home for elevated conversation. Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
Well, the news yesterday, of course, the Federal Reserve hiked interest rates by another 1/4 percentage point, bringing the interest rate to its highest in about 20 years. Fed has a goal, of course, of hitting a 2% inflation rate before really committing to change course. So we want to get a real sense of where are we, what does it look like, and what can we anticipate moving forward. And, of course, we always turn to Jeff Cox, the economics editor for CNBC.com, to help us make all the dollars and cents make sense. So, Jeff, welcome back to the show.
Thank you, boy. Good to be here.
All right, so give us a sense. We know what they did. Take us in a little bit in terms of how they explained it and what that meant to you in terms of where we go from here.
Well, I guess what they did was kind of just followed through on what everybody thought they were going to do. They went ahead and enacted that 1/4 point hike. The basic rationale behind it is that they still feel that inflation is too high. There was some enthusiasm from some of the recent reports that we had gotten. The CPI report, of course, showed that headline inflation had drifted down to 3%, which gets you pretty close to where the Fed's goal is. Jay Powell in his post-meeting news conference basically just stressed that, 1 month's data does not a victory make, and they feel that they need to see more proof. I think that they're worried about their credibility as inflation fighters here. There's a whole lot of shadows from history that are kind of informing Fed policy now, that they don't want to go down the same road that their predecessors went down in the late 1970s, 1980s. I sort of feel almost like, hey, they laid the groundwork for this. They don't like to surprise the markets. The markets were ready for this. I just think where we go from here is going to be very interesting. Interesting, day for the markets. Dow and S&P were higher for much of the session, and then we just recently kind of took a turn lower. Not really quite sure what that's all about, but there are a lot of things that are happening right now, but it sure takes some of the starch out of this rally, and it kind of raises some questions about what the Fed might do. And, of course, we had a GDP report this morning that also had some influential information in it.
Yeah, and before we get into some of that information that came out this morning, take us in just a little bit further. You mentioned those long shadows of history. I do think historically there was kind of that criticism that they took their foot off a little too soon and didn't quite finish the job. And so what do you anticipate? Do they really just seem committed out of fear of repeating history, making sure they have credibility, or is there something strategic we're not really seeing yet?
I think there's a lot of that, and I also just kind of feel, look, there's a ton of history to go along with this, and one of the pieces of history that goes along with this is that Fed Governor Jay Powell, before he became Fed Chair Jay Powell, was a person who had spoken up on a number of occasions at meetings when rates were around the zero lower bound, and he was not happy about that, worried about the optionality that it gave the Fed in times of crisis. That if you're at zero, you can't cut. So I think he would like rates to be kind of permanently higher. So there's part of that. I think just look, when you look at the economic data, you look at the employment situation, and you look at, again, the GDP data, the economy is sort of giving him permission right now to go ahead and stay tight and keep the heat on. Look, and to be really frank about it, the Powell tenure so far has been marked by a number of policy missteps. He was pushed it a little bit too hard towards the end of 2018, saying that we weren't even close to a neutral rate, and that the balance sheet reduction was on autopilot, and then they had to backtrack on that. And he's had some high profile wrong calls, transitory on inflation being probably the worst of them. So they want to keep their credentials going here. They want to make sure that that the public and the markets are convinced that the Fed is really serious about fighting inflation, that they're not going to give up prematurely. And I asked Powell directly. I was called on during the press conference, and I asked him directly, "What's it going to take for you to finally say, okay, we can ease off a little bit?" And he really didn't provide. He wasn't going to get into specific numbers, concrete things, that sort of stuff. So tell you that the higher for longer regime is still very much in place.
Fascinating and a very interesting look. So let's talk about the GDP numbers, the unemployment rate. You still have those that are saying, hey, recession. The recession word is not out of the question. Some are still saying, hey, maybe in the next 12 months. How do you see some of those numbers? Play those out for us.
Well, look, we've had 525 basis points worth of interest rate hikes over the last year plus, and the unemployment rate is exactly where it was 1 year ago. Yeah. So the jobs market has held up incredibly. Consumers still hanging in there. I think if you wanted to point to one weakish type of number out of the GDP today, it was the fact that consumer spending only rose by 1.6%, which was a sharp pullback. It was up 4.2% in the first quarter. Still positive, but definitely showing some signs of weariness on the consumer. And of course, we know that consumer spending makes up about 68% of all of total GDP. But otherwise, it was a really strong report. It really was. We had big gains in gross private domestic investment, which is something that you really want to see. Big surge in equipment purchases, investment in structures, of course, government spending up. And then on top of it, we saw a durable goods report that came out at the same time that the GDP report came out, and that was way ahead of expectations. That was like a 4.7% increase in June. So it showed that the quarter ended strongly in terms of demand for a kind of big ticket items. And then, of course, we had weekly jobless claims come in at just 221,000. So we're really moving down there, and maybe from the Fed perspective, moving in the wrong direction, perhaps, because that could continue to put pressure on wages. And again, yesterday, after saying for a long time that that wages weren't a significant component of inflation, at least in the early days, the early rise, now saying that wages are becoming more of an issue as far as the bigger inflation picture goes.
And then just as we round things out, Jeff, you wrote at CNBC Pro yesterday that the Wall Street economists are saying the rate hikes are over, even if the Fed isn't ready to declare just such a thing yet. Give us a look into the fall in terms of employment and jobs and where we are. Is recession around there? What happens if that does happen? What does that look like going into the fall?
Well, this is kind of like the Where's Waldo recession, right?
Yeah.
keep trying to find it, and it just doesn't show up in the data. We're going to get a bunch of interesting points coming up. In fact, tomorrow we're going to get those PCE price numbers, and that, of course, is the number that the Fed puts more credence in rather than the CPI that the public follows more closely. According to the Dow Jones estimates, looking at core PCE dropping back to 4.2% on an annual basis. That's down from 4.6% where it was in May. So that's a big deal. Another number that's not a huge thing as far as the public goes, the employment cost index coming out tomorrow, and the Fed follows that one very closely as well. So I think going into the fall, we keep waiting for more weakness from the from the payrolls. At 209,000 that we had last month was the first time in a while that we'd actually missed expectations. So we're just going to keep watching that stuff. There's some I'm hearing is that these CPI numbers are expected to come in soft again for the next couple of months. The big deal, of course, being is that now we don't get to hear from the Fed until September, other than they go out to Jackson Hole next month and we'll get a speech from Powell, and that will be something really important to watch, to listen, to see how he frames his ideas as far as as far as future policy goes, but we won't actually get a Fed meeting now until well into September. So a lot can happen between now and they're going to get a look at a lot of data points. And if the data keeps moving in the direction that it's moving in, they're going to have a much harder time explaining why they continue to tighten policy when it seems that that victory over inflation is at least somewhat within their grasp.
Yeah, great stuff as always, and of course we always watch for the speech there at Jackson Hole from the Fed chair. We hope you'll come along and then just swing down. You can just swing by the studio. We can have you live, and you can get a vacation out of it as well. So it'd be a good thing. But.
That sounds terrific, boy. I would like that. That'd be great.
Awesome. Jeff Cox is the economics editor for CNBC.com. Always helps us with all the numbers. Jeff, thanks so much for joining us today.
Be well. Thank you.
All right. Great stuff as always from Jeff Cox. I don't know that there's anyone who understands the numbers better than Jeff Cox does and helps us make the news make sense when it comes to interest rates, the economy, jobs, inflation. More Inside Sources coming up next. Stick around. We'll be right back.
On the way home,
4,000 Utahns with student loans will get a break.
catch up on the day's biggest stories.
Record-setting temperatures plague cities all over the country.
Plus, traffic and weather every 10 minutes on the nines. Get more from your drive with Jeff Kaplan's Afternoon News. Weekdays 3 to 7 on KSL News Radio.
When it comes to making plans, you are the best. What about those round trips that you plan in advance, which are perfect on your way there and perfect on your way back? Or those meetings with friends for which you make a group chat 3 months before so that nobody or anything is missing? Or your daughter's first birthday party. You planned it with such dedication that instead of the first, it felt like our 15s. The same way you plan each detail for those moments. Start planning to protect you and your loved ones from a natural disaster. Sign up for local weather and emergency alerts. Prepare an emergency kit and make a family communications plan. Protecting your family is the best plan you can make. Get started at ready.gov/plan.
Brought to you by FEMA and the Ad Council.
Every business seeks an advantage, whether it's having the best location, hiring top talent, or spotting trends before they happen. And now, the United States Postal Service can give your business a new advantage. Introducing USPS Ground Advantage. Reliable and affordable 2 to 5 day package shipping. It's the advantage you need at the price you want. Get the Ground Advantage at USPS.com/advantage. The United States Postal Service, delivering for America.
Attorney Joe Cordell.
Business owners and professionals face special challenges in divorce court. In addition to everything else going on, they have to contend with allegations that they are earning more than they are, coupled with claims on their business or practice itself. Clients with assets depend on their divorce lawyer's skills in these matters, and that's why it's so important to hire someone that has those skills.
Schedule an appointment with one of Cordell & Cordell's Salt Lake City area attorneys. 910 West Legacy Center Way, Suite 120, Midvale, Utah, 84047.
This is Jeff Stout with Fink & McGregor, Mortgages Made Simple. Over the years, I have seen a lot of down payment assistance programs. Most of them just aren't practical for one reason or another, but we have one now that is pretty solid. This program is for first-time home buyers or some buyers who have been out of the market for several years. It includes a gift of up to $4,000 to help with the down payment. Given that this program only calls for a 3% down payment in the first place, this gift can be a real game changer. Some restrictions apply. One restriction is that the household income cannot be over a certain amount, which for most areas along the Wasatch Front is around $85,000 annual income. Call us today if you want to take a look. Fink & McGregor, Mortgages Made Simple, 801-264-9494. That's 264-9494. Or on the web at finkmcgregor.com. NMLS 289115.
Let's cut to the chase. $25 per room for the best no residue carpet cleaning. Zero Res pioneered the no residue difference, and to celebrate Pioneer Day, Zero Res will clean your carpets for just $25 per room. Other companies say they clean as good as Zero Res, but it's just not the same. Zero Res has patented technology to ensure you get the best cleaning possible, and yes, those patents mean that no one else is cleaning like this. Celebrate Pioneer Day with the pioneers of no residue cleaning, Zero Res carpet and air duct cleaning. Today only, they're cleaning the Wasatch Front for just $25 per room. Minimums and restrictions apply, but there are no maximums. Clean 5 rooms, 6 rooms, clean the whole house. Just $25 per room. You don't have to clean today, but you do have to get on the schedule. $25 per room, Pioneer Day savings ends today. Schedule today, visit ZeroRes.com. That's ZeroRez.com.
KSL News Radio and the KSL Sports Zone are counting down to the kickoff of college football with a huge giveaway. This summer, you could win a new travel trailer from Bish's RV. Family owned for 30 years. Bish's RV has always helped RVers go play. And you'll win a pair of BYU season tickets as the Cougars prepare to take on the Big 12. Enter now. Text the word football to 57500 or visit kslsports.com/contests.
With the 3 things you need to know this hour, I'm Dan Bonas. First, Clearfield police are hoping somebody can help them locate a dog that disappeared along with a stolen car. The suspected thief has been arrested. Second, President Trump's lawyers have been meeting with the special counsel investigating the January 6th attack on the Capitol. That meeting could signal an indictment is about to happen. And third, the United States will have to figure out what to do with its military personnel on the ground in Niger after a coup replaced the civilian government there. Right now, 96 degrees, partly cloudy in Salt Lake City. Back to Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
Hear elevated conversation on crucial issues. Boyd Matheson on Inside Sources.
Well, we marked the anniversary of the Korean Armistice Agreement, basically ending the Korean War. The war created thousands of war orphans, many of whom were adopted by families in the United States, including here in Utah. But many who came here as children didn't become citizens until much later, often as adults, which created all kinds of challenges, hardship, expenses. So we want to look at why there's such a gap between adoption and citizenship and how we actually fix that. Really pleased to have joining us back on the program, Sarah Jones is CEO of Inclusion Pro. Also pleased to have with us today Stacy Robison, who's a paralegal at a Chicago-based tech company. Both have a shared story and wrote a beautiful piece for Deseret.com this week. Welcome to both of you.
Hi, Boyd. Thank you for having us.
Wonderful. And Sarah,
thank you, Boyd.
Oh, wonderful. And Sarah, let me start with you. And just for our listeners, just give a quick kind of reframing in terms of what's the genesis of this? Where did this start? And then we'll get into a little bit of Stacy's story and then some of the solutions that are happening.
Yeah, I think most people know that the Korean War happened, but what a lot of people may not know is it really was a significant driver for intercountry adoption. And as a result, Korean adoptees were kind of that big first wave. I'm actually in the big second wave of Korean adoption, and so is Stacy. And then it kind of petered out after the Olympics in Seoul, Korea. But there was a significant number, over 160,000 that were adopted from Korea to the United States over the decades. And, it wasn't until 2000 that Congress actually first legislated citizenship for intercountry adoptees. And so that might sound really shocking, but there really hasn't been the attention that was needed for what it really meant to come from a different country, to be raised here, essentially by U.S. Citizen parents, right? Same as I've got a biological sister who's a biological daughter of my parents, but to be raised in a family, feeling and believing that you are their equals, being raised as American, proud to be American, and then to discover later in life that you didn't actually have citizenship. Now, that's not my story. That's why I want to say that for Stacy. She and I had very different experiences. Yeah. My parents were able to get my naturalization done, when I was 16, and that was ages ago, right, decades ago. But that's not the case for tens of thousands of intercountry adoptees. And we're not just talking about Korea. They were kind of the first big, country that sent children overseas, but there's been a lot of countries that this actually impacts, where children have actually, in some cases, been deported back to their original country. And so if you can imagine just how traumatizing that can be when you've grown up believing your whole life you're a U.S. citizen, everyone around you is a U.S. citizen, and then to essentially be sent to another country where you don't know the language, the culture, you don't have resources, you're basically living like a refugee in another country that happened to have been your birth country, you know? It sounds so bizarre, but we still have this gap in our law that still allows for that. And so I'm going to stop there if there's any questions.
Yeah, no, let's jump over to Stacy and her experience. As you said, you both had similar experiences in terms of being adopted and being here in the state of Utah. Stacy, share with us your experience starting back in South Korea in 1975.
Yeah, wow, you're taking me back quite a bit.
Way back.
Way back. Adopted by 2 U.S. citizens, wonderful parents. I've lived in Utah my whole life. My parents adopted 5 other siblings, so total 4 of us, international, 2 domestic. Was raised in Utah. My parents adopted most of us through the same adoption agency, and were assured with each process that citizenship was part of the adoption process. So I lived my life as if I was a citizen, applied for a passport in my late 20s, and was shocked to discover that I wasn't a citizen. And that really kind of turned my life upside down a little bit and introduced a level of security that I hadn't known. And it took quite a long time to find an attorney that could guide me through the correct process, and then gathering all the information I needed to, number one, keep my naturalization current was a project, and then once I had that secured, then applying for citizenship was another process. But luckily that concluded. I obtained citizenship in October of last year, and now I'm happy to lend my experience to help highlight the importance of the Adoptee Citizenship Act.
Yeah, and it's such an important thing, and this is something that the Utah congressional delegation, both on the House side and our 2 senators, have been working on. And Sarah, just give us a little update, a sense in terms of where we are on that. And again, this goes far beyond just Korea. These are adoptees from around the world who face similar things to what Stacy has experienced, what you experienced, the uncertainty of all of that. Where are we in terms of getting a legislative fix in all of this?
That's right. So the Adoptee Citizenship Act is a piece of legislation that we've been trying to pass for about 9 years now. So this is the 9th year to fix this gap in the Child Citizenship Act. And it essentially, this uncertainty that Stacy experienced is affecting us older adoptees. So if you were born before February 1983, it could affect you. You may not actually have citizenship and may not even realize it, even if you may be paying taxes or have a job or driver's license. And so the Adoptee Citizenship Act just really seeks to make this retroactive for everyone. There was actually no viable reason why that date was put in there in the Child Citizenship Act. And so as a result, I think it was unintentionally, for those congressional leaders who were trying to do the right thing, right? Sometimes these things get missed. But it has been 20 years since then, almost 23 years, and we need to get this fixed because it is impacting real people's lives, in their ability to really be able to thrive, which is, frankly, part of the American dream, the promise that we were given when we were adopted by U.S. citizen parents, right? And so, there's not an even playing field. Some adoptees ended up in families that were unfortunately abusive or, ended back in foster care, and sometimes they have interactions with the legal system. And so that has resulted in deportations, which may seem, really unfair. But when I think about this as really a family issue, right? The Utah parents chose this way to form their families. We would just never do that to a biological child. We would never send them out of the country after they completed their time, their time in prison or whatever whatever the consequences were. We just don't do that to our children, right? And so we really hope people will see this as it's a family issue, right? With this immigration technicality, let's get it fixed. And like you said, we've had great conversations with Senator Lee's office, Senator Romney's, all of our 4 congressional offices. We know that our Utah folks, to the extent as possible, all our leaders are going to support this, and we really hope that will happen on a national basis as well.
Fantastic. Stacey Robinson, Sarah Jones, we appreciate you bringing this to light, and we hope that this becomes reality so all those international adoptees have certainty, have confidence in their version of the American dream. Well, that wraps up hour number 1 of Inside Sources here on KSL News Radio. We will step aside for some top-of-the-hour news. More important conversations coming up. Stick around. Inside Sources on KSL News Radio. We'll be right back.
KSL FM Midvale, KSL Salt Lake City. Listen on the KSL News Radio app and in your car at 102.7 FM. KSL News Radio, your all-day companion for news.
It's 2 o'clock at KSL News Radio. I'm Dan Bomas. KSL's top story this hour, a handful of dirt bikers working to keep their fellow riders safe at a popular trail near the Bountiful Bee. A dicey washout on a popular, unsanctioned, and unmaintained trail has led to several severe crashes, so they went there and installed a stop sign.
Yeah, don't ride off that. You got to go all the way back around.
The riders tell KSL TV they've been working on recovering an abandoned bike that went off the edge of the washout. City of Midway is capping all new construction at 35 feet. Park Record reports the Midway City Council voted last week to cap the height of all buildings in the city. The city planner says this will be the universal requirement, including in resort zones. City officials say some buildings already under construction or already built exceed the limit. They will be exempted. Our top national story this hour from ABC News. An update on the condition of LeBron James' son, Bronny, who reportedly had a cardiac arrest earlier this week while practicing with his college basketball team in Los Angeles. ABC's Alex Stone reports from L.A.
On Monday, Bronny James suffered cardiac arrest while working out with the basketball team at the University of Southern California. For a brief period, he was in the ICU. Until now, the James family has not said much except that he's stable. In a new short statement, LeBron James updating Bronny's status, thanking fans for love and prayers. He says everyone is doing great, that the family is together, and that they'll have more to say when they're ready. Alex Stone, ABC News, Los Angeles.
Your money at this moment, the Dow Jones average having a down day, down 238 points right now. The NASDAQ is down 77 points, S&P down 29. And our KSL weather, we've had a supposedly sunny day, but the clouds are building up. That's next. KSL News Time, 2:02.
We have enough people running around Broadcast House at 4 in the morning to field a football team.
Producers, reporters, the traffic team, and us.
This is Tim and Amanda.
Join us each morning from 5 to 9 on KSL News Radio.
As I look at my path to the NFL, I wouldn't have been able to do it by myself. Having a supporting cast for me made all the difference, both on and off the field. And the thing I realized this last year was having that supporting cast made my dreams and my goals a reality. I prepare as best as I can for every situation on the football field. You know, that same mindset applies to me as a husband, as a dad. And being a new father with an 8-month-old child, I've realized that, you know, I now have a responsibility to my son and to my wife, just like I do my teammates. I spent all my time being a quarterback, and I need to find people that I can trust and rely upon. Deseret First Credit Union, they are those people that are spending all that time to help me manage and take care of my family. My name is Taysom Hill, and my why is faith, family, and football.
Can we talk about something difficult to discuss? Are you going through a difficult financial time? You have equity in your home, but nobody can help. I'm Jason Erskine with American Home Loans, and we have created the Bridge Loan Program to use your equity regardless of your credit at this time. The Bridge Loan can be used to pay debts, collections, IRS liens, divorce settlement, or just simply improve your property. Give us a call at 801-262-2221. This loan creates a bridge between now and a much brighter future. During COVID, one of our clients had over $85,000 on credit cards. Their scores were too low to borrow on their home. We were able to save them $2,000 a month, and after 8 months, they qualified for a conventional loan and improved their situation. Look, the consultation is free. Please let us see what we can do for you. Call 801-262-2221. That's 801-262-2221, or go to AmericanHomeLoans.com. That's AmericanHomeLoans.com.
NMLS 245422, Equal Housing Lender.
Get Mr. Max Performance Missionary Package. 1 performance suit, 4 and collar stretch shirts, 3 ties, 1 mission belt, and 1 pair of Echo or Johnston & Murphy shoes. Just $595.
Traffic and weather together, brought to you by Granite Credit Union's high-yield savings certificates. Here's Ricky Meese.
What's left of that earlier accident is still there over to the left shoulder, southbound I-15 after the point of the mountain. However, all of the backups have cleared. Pioneer Day savings with the pioneers of no residue carpet cleaning. Only $25 per room. Minimum supply. You don't have to clean today, but you do have to schedule. Online at zerores.com. Ricky Meese in the KSL Traffic Center.
KSL weather, we could see more afternoon thunderstorms today. Clouds building up right now. It'll be hot with a high of 99. Dries out through the rest of the week with highs climbing to 103 by Saturday. And there's a chance for more rain Monday and Tuesday. Right now, we're at 97 degrees, partly cloudy at KSL News Radio, 102.7 FM, 1160 AM, and KSLNewsRadio.com. Your all-day companion for news.
Inside Sources.
Inside Sources.
America's voice of reason. Boyd Matheson.
On Utah's home for elevated conversation.
Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
The headlines say that Florida has adopted a new curriculum that will teach students about how slavery benefited those who were enslaved. The idea that slavery benefited slaves is preposterous, of course. But Florida Governor Ron DeSantis simply perpetuated that was what the curriculum was about. Vice President Kamala Harris immediately jumped on that for political purposes, criticized it vehemently. But beyond the headlines, what are the people who actually created the curriculum saying? It just might be time to think again. Let's begin.
Think you know the news of the day? Think again with Boyd Matheson on KSL News Radio.
All right, so we want to back up and think again about all of this. There's been a lot of things happening in the news, a lot of things that have become very political from the left and from the right equally. And lost in all of that, I think, are some really important principles, some really crucial parts of our history, and how we go about teaching that actually matters. But so often, because of the instant certainty, the immediate reactions, the political posturing, it keeps us a safe distance from having the right conversation. So, of course, the big headline has been around this new curriculum in the state of Florida and how it teaches slavery. Word leaked out that it was teaching that slaves benefited from slavery, which is absolutely ludicrous and preposterous and any other pejorative you want to lace onto that. Vice President Kamala Harris immediately jumped on that, traveled to Florida to criticize the new curriculum.
How is it that anyone could suggest that in the midst of these atrocities, that there was any benefit to being subjected to this level of dehumanization?
So as Vice President Harris, I don't think she read the curriculum. And so I think she made a political statement, and it worked. Not to be outdone, Governor Ron DeSantis, speaking to reporters here in the state of Utah last week, shrugged his shoulders, said he had nothing to do with the curriculum, and took a guess at what it might be about.
Well, you should talk to them about it. I mean, I didn't do it, and I wasn't involved in it. But I think what they're doing is I think that they're probably going to show some of the folks that eventually parlayed, being a blacksmith into doing things later in life. But the reality is all of that is rooted in whatever is factual. They listed everything out. And if you have any questions about it, just ask the Department of Education. You can talk about those folks. But I mean, these were scholars who put that together. It was not anything that was done politically.
Okay, 3 strikes and you're out on the governor for that one. I think Vice President Harris was wrong in instant certainty in terms of what the curriculum was. Governor DeSantis was absolutely wrong in suggesting what it might be, which caused the ruckus to begin with. Strike number 2 was shrugging his shoulders and saying, I had nothing to do with it. I wasn't involved. And 3, pointing fingers that if you have a problem, go talk to the people who created the curriculum because that wasn't me, that wasn't political. That doesn't work. That's not what leadership looks like. So I think both Vice President Harris and Governor DeSantis were wrong on this. So let's go to the source. Radical stuff, I know. Dr. William Allen is a Black American, former chairman of the U.S. Commission on Civil Rights. He's now a member of Florida's African American History Standards Work Group, which created the curriculum. So he responded to the criticism from Vice President Harris and explained what is actually in the curriculum.
Well, I can't answer critics whom I haven't seen or heard. The only criticism I've encountered so far is a single one that was articulated by the Vice President, and which was an error. As I stated in my response to the Vice President, it was categorically false. It was never said that slavery was beneficial to Africans. What was said, and anyone who reads this will see this with clarity, it is the case that Africans proved resourceful, resilient, and adaptive, and were able to develop skills and aptitudes which served to their benefit, both while enslaved and after enslavement.
So that's Dr. William Allen, again, part of the group that created the curriculum. I actually love the component that he says, look, the Africans that were brought here in slavery were resourceful, resilient, and adapted, and developed skills and aptitudes that served them both while they were enslaved and after enslavement. There's a whole bunch of principles in there that are worth celebrating for everybody. Now, Dr. William Allen also told ABC News that his great-grandfather, who was a slave, through his own resilience and resourcefulness and adaptiveness, was able to provide for his family and prosper after enslavement.
My great-grandfather came to this country through fraudulent inducement, looking for opportunity only to find himself a slave. But he had the pluck to seek opportunity, and that pluck that he brought with him provided the skills, provided the initiative that allowed him post-slavery to establish his family securely. And this is the story of millions of people.
So I think there's a component to how Black history is taught in schools in Florida that should be highlighting those very things. Everybody should learn from those skills, from those principles that those that were enslaved and then after enslavement used to rise above it. That's worth noting. That's worth looking at. That's worth celebrating. That's worth emulating. Now, I want to get to this important part of this Think Again moment. Dr. Allen talked about a couple of specific voices when it comes to slavery in their own voices, which I think is something that we really have to get back to whenever and wherever possible when it comes to history. Because far too often we're trying to do history from the lofty perch of where we stand today, often judging the past by where we are today, not recognizing it was a different world, it's a different country, and also recognizing that what they did and went through actually enabled us to be where we are today. So Dr. Allen talked about Booker T. Washington, Frederick Douglass, and that what we should do as we teach history is we should actually go to their own words, not our interpretations.
Booker T. Washington titled his autobiography, Up from Slavery. That's his story, not our story. He told it. Frederick Douglass told the story of the mistress of his slave master teaching him to read, beginning that until she was shut down by the slave master. She pulled back the curtain just a bit so a beam of light shone through. When that was enough for him to take that beam and turn it through his own efforts into a flame of illumination that benefited him and his country. And these stories are legend. The people who lived the histories told the stories. The curriculum is about allowing the people who live the histories to speak in their own names, for themselves, to tell their own stories.
I love that. To let those who lived the history speak for themselves, to tell their own story. Dr. Allen also shared that the accomplishment of other Black Americans post-slavery showed what principles in America actually work.
Frederick Douglass and Ida B. Wells in 1893 demonstrated in protesting the exclusion of blacks from the World Fair of 1893 amidst thousands of lynchings that the accomplishments of black people post-slavery were the accomplishments not just of Black Americans, but the accomplishments of American principles. And that is the truth that people seek to deny by erasing the stories of the people who lived through the histories.
So many important pieces in there. Again, if you allow just the headlines to drive it, if you just allow the politics to be the center of the universe, you come out with a crazy argument that isn't even based on reality in terms of what the curriculum actually is. I think Governor DeSantis dropped it, botched it, shrugged his shoulders, pointed fingers, and placed blame, and that's not what leadership looks like. I think Vice President Harris took an opportunistic moment and attacked with certainty something that she didn't know was the real story. I think what Dr. Allen has said is, look, let's let history speak for itself. Let those voices, let those who lived it tell their own stories, not our interpretations. If we really want to celebrate it, if we really want to move the country forward, we can value the dignity in what happened, what these people who were enslaved were able to do because they were resilient, because they were resourceful, and because they ended up in a place that gave them a path forward. We got to have a different discussion, especially when it comes to how we talk about history, all history in this country, if we actually want to move the country forward.
Think again on Inside Sources with Boyd Matheson. When news breaks early in the morning.
The explosion occurred around 5:30 this morning.
2 people injured in an explosion at a chemical plant.
It's a normal operation going on here with some individuals working on a tank.
KSL reporters race to the scene.
There's no ongoing risk to the public.
Get breaking news and the top stories. Utah's Morning News with Tim and Amanda.
We do have a reporter on the scene, and we'll have more for you coming up.
Weekdays 5 to 9 on KSL News Radio.
Looking for a trusted oral surgery practice? Look no further than Aspire Surgical. With a team of highly skilled and experienced board-certified oral and facial surgeons, Aspire Surgical offers a variety of surgical services, from wisdom teeth removal to dental implants to facial cosmetics. At Aspire Surgical, patient comfort and safety are top priorities. Their state-of-the-art facilities and advanced techniques ensure that patients receive the best possible care in a comfortable and safe environment. Visit their website at aspiresurgical.net or call 385-474-4952 to schedule a consultation today. Trust Aspire Surgical for all your oral surgery needs. Visit aspiresurgical.net or call 385-474-4952 to schedule a consultation today. Aspire Surgical, where your aspirations become a reality. You hear that? That's the sound your new water makes just before it gets to your bottle. You see, at Little Spring Water, they don't add a thing. It's the purest, cleanest, and healthiest water you can possibly drink. It's nature in a bottle. Little Spring Water is a family-owned and operated bottled water company right here in Utah, nestled in a beautiful canyon in Bear Lake. This spring has been in the family for 5 generations, and now it can be in yours as well. It's high-quality premium spring water packaged in a durable recyclable bottle that won't spill or crack on you and can be refilled multiple times. No chemicals, no additives, just pure, clean, healthy water. And because Little Spring Water is local, you can get it at a fraction of the cost. Look for Little Spring Water at a grocery store near you. If you don't see it, ask a grocer for it by name. It is available at Lee's Marketplace and Ridley's Family Markets. Little Spring Water. It's nature in a bottle.
Introducing Yes Heating, Air Conditioning, Plumbing, and Electric. We're bringing all of Utah's favorite HVAC, plumbing, and electrical brands under one roof. Call Yes today and we'll waive the service call fee with any HVAC, plumbing, or electrical system repair. The expert technicians at Yes are available 7 days a week to fix all of your heating, cooling, plumbing, and electrical problems. Yes Heating, Air Conditioning, Plumbing, and Electric. Proudly serving Utah for more than 45 years. Call now or visit theyesmancan.com for details, terms, and conditions.
Ron had a tax problem he just couldn't handle on his own.
I owed the IRS taxes for over 5 years, but I didn't have any money to pay the taxes.
Those years cost him dearly.
Most of it was fees and interest. It was horrible.
Ron finally called in the pros.
I called Optima Tax Relief, and boy, am I happy I did.
The leading tax resolution firm, Optima, is A+ rated by the Better Business Bureau. They've resolved over $1 billion for their clients. Ron was overjoyed.
They settled my account with IRS. I was ecstatic. They are a lifesaver. They are. I am so happy.
Take Ron's advice and call Optima now for a free consultation.
Yeah, don't do like I did and wait. Call Optima Tax Relief. Do it now. You'll be ecstatic like me.
Call 800-343-6460. 800-343-6460. 800-343-6460.
Optima Tax Relief.
Testimonial from an actual client. Some restrictions apply. For complete details, please visit OptimaTaxRelief.com.
Any Hour Services can make sure your AC keeps you cool this summer. Whether you need a tune-up, repair, or just a second opinion about replacing it, call Any Hour Services or visit anyhourservices.com.
I'm Andy Farnsworth from KSL News Radio.
And I'm Kellyanne Halverson.
And we're hosts of KSL's Fan Effect podcast.
That's Fan Effect with an E.
We're excited to share with you our knowledge
and arguments
on everything pop culture and fandom, featuring movie and television reviews, pop culture deep dives into video games, cosplay, fandom events, and more. Listen regularly on your favorite podcast platform at kslnewsradio.com, kslpodcasts.com, or on the KSL News Radio app.
And remember, that's Fan Effect with an E.
Tim and Amanda.
If this is the first time you've ever joined us, can we just say welcome? I hope you come back and see us again. Tim and I have been doing this for a long time, and we love what we do. But the best part of what we do always and will always be connecting with you.
How many times do we say people don't understand how much information and really love we get from that side of the radio?
Yes.
They thank us for giving it to them, but we get it back so many times.
Wake up with Utah's Morning News with Tim and Amanda, 5 to 9 on KSL News Radio.
Mom and Dad used to argue about everything, especially about Dad's drinking. My family went from totally crazy to quiet, calm, and even peaceful when Mom started going to Al-Anon family groups. I wanted a better relationship with Dad, so I asked Mom if she would take me to her Al-Anon meetings or to Alateen. I'm sure glad I did. If someone's drinking troubling you, you might be surprised at what you can learn in an Al-Anon or Alateen family group from people just like you. Call 1-888-4-ALANON or go to alanon.org.
With the three things you need to know this hour, I'm Dan Bonas. First, a group of dirt bikers trying to make riding around the Bountiful Bee a little safer with a stop sign. Second, the town of Midway doesn't want to see tall buildings. It's capping new construction at 35 feet. Third, LeBron James' family is saying his son Bronny James is doing okay in the hospital following his cardiac arrest on Monday. Right now, 97 degrees, partly cloudy in Salt Lake City. Back to Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
Question: what will you find on all over-the-counter or OTC medicine packages to help you choose the right drug and use it safely? The answer: the Drug Facts label. This label lists the medicine's active ingredients and purpose, how much to take, and warnings you should know before using it. Remember, even OTC medicines you buy without a prescription can cause side effects you don't want. So follow the information listed on the Drug Facts label. For more information, visit fda.gov/Drug Facts label. A message from the U.S. Food and Drug Administration.
Get deeper insights on the news from Inside Sources.
Welcome back to Inside Sources here on KSL News Radio. It's great to be with you today. As always, I am Boyd Matheson, and we're just a few weeks away from the 2-year anniversary of the fall of Kabul, when the U.S. withdrew from Afghanistan. Since then, of course, the country has been under Taliban control, and the Taliban has been hunting down anyone who helped, worked with, or was trained by the United States. Today, very interesting, the Salt Lake County District Attorney's Office has announced a new campaign to help save the lives of prosecutors who were trained by the United States and its allies, as well as their families inside of Afghanistan. Really pleased to have joining us on the program today, Yama Rain, a former Afghanistan prosecutor and co-founder and director at International Organization for Transitional Justice and Peace. And Yama, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure being here.
So tell us a little bit of your story. You were a prosecutor in Afghanistan. Tell us your experience there, and then we'll talk about what it is that you've created with Sim Gill in the District Attorney's Office to help others.
Well, to answer this question, let me first give you a brief about what I did in Afghanistan. I started being, working as an anti-corruption prosecutor, which was a U.S. Justice project for Afghanistan. It was a rule of law project. So I am one of the founder of the anti-corruption unit. I started my professions from there. So we work along the U.S. Justice Department's project since 2012. Then, I moved to the United States and got an opportunity to do my expertise on governance and anti-corruption. And I was back and forth there. As you know, the Taliban's Ministry of Justice and their chief of justice are the architects of the fair and oppressions. They advocate extremism and ideologies and have turned their wrath upon the very pillars of the justice. Since the Afghan prosecutors were going after, the Taliban's and those extremists who have been involved on several dimensions, crimes, and once they were going to uphold the rule of law and bring them to justice. After the fall of the Kabul in August 2021, the Taliban launched a campaign to hand the law practitioners and the prosecutors in Afghanistan. So this is how we came together with the Salt Lake City District Attorney, Mrs. Sim Gill, and the APA to launch a prosecutor for prosecutor campaign to raise money and to relocate and evacuate those professionals who left behind and their life and their families' lives are in danger. And yes, this is the reason that we, work together with Sim Gill to evacuate 1,500 professionals who have been trained by the foreign institutions, especially the United States Department of Justice.
Yeah, and that's such an important thing. I really do believe, as it is with those that were interpreters, those that were guides, those that worked in various different situations with the United States and with our allies in Afghanistan, that we really do have this moral duty to act to protect. They were there for us. They had our back. We need to make sure that we have theirs. And so help us understand those prosecutors, again, that are inside of Afghanistan. What do you know of their state and standing? Are they in hiding? And what does that process look like?
Most of the prosecutors who work with the U.S. allies and the international institutions, they are in a desperate situation, and most of them are hiding, and some of them could find a way to flee the country and to seek refuge in neighboring countries, but most of them are in hiding. In just past 10 days, we had several, prosecutors that has been arrested and killed by the Taliban members and their intelligence services. So technically, most of them are in hiding, and they are, changing their places from one province to another to be safe from the Taliban.
Yeah, such an important work. And again, this is a Prosecutors for Prosecutors rolled out today with Salt Lake County District Attorney Sim Gill. Also, a number of others that participated in a press conference today talking about this effort to raise funds to get 1,500 prosecutors, again, that were trained by the U.S. or our allies, to get them out of the country. Again, it's that moral duty to get that right. And I think that's such an important thing, that these are the things that often get left behind and often get forgotten in the process of war and in battles. And as the world continues to move on, there are a host of people who were very important allies, very important partners with the United States. And I agree that this is a moral duty to act, to protect, to help, to give aid there. Yama, thank you so much for joining us today. We appreciate your efforts with the International Organization for Transitional Justice and Peace and this important effort, Prosecutors for Prosecutors, helping 1,500 Afghan prosecutors and their families evacuate out of Afghanistan. Thanks so much for joining us today.
It's a pleasure. Thank you so much.
All right, this is an important work. Sim Gill, of course, was a part of that press conference today in terms of raising funds to get these people who were very important strategic partners for the United States, dealing with the Taliban, dealing with things inside of Afghanistan. And again, the work isn't done, even though it's been nearly 2 years since the United States pulled out of Afghanistan. There are important things that we need to do to show that we live up to our principles that we profess to believe as a nation. I think this is part of that. All right, we'll go ahead and we'll step aside for some bottom of the hour news. Lost in a lot of the Hunter Biden hearings and conversations yesterday, there was an important whistleblower conversation about UFOs and what right Congress has to information coming from the military. We'll talk about that coming up next on Inside Sources.
It's 2:30 at KSL News Radio. I'm Dan Bomas. KSL's top national story this hour. We're learning why a $166 million F-35 jet fighter crashed at Hill Air Force Base last October. KSL News Radio's Kara Hoffelmeyer has the explanation.
The simple answer, turbulence. The pilot, which was the third of four to land, experienced a slight rumble in their aircraft because of wake turbulence from the fighter jet landing before. Because of that turbulence, the plane's onboard technology that reads the air data got some inputs it considered erratic, which then led to a situation where the flight controls weren't responding properly. Attempts by the pilot to manually recover control weren't successful either, and ultimately the pilot had to eject themselves because of the low altitude, low airspeed, and the way the plane was flying. The pilot experienced minor injuries from the event. The investigation organization said one significant factor in the crash was that the pilot needed to leave more landing space between their plane and the plane before. Kira Hoffelmeyer, KSL News Radio.
Our top national story this hour from ABC News. UN climate scientists say this will certainly go down as the warmest July on record. United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres used his strongest words yet.
Climate change is here. It is terrifying, and it is just the beginning. The era of global warming has ended. The era of global boiling has arrived.
Many cities around the United States, including Salt Lake, have set new records for high temperatures this summer. Your money at this moment, the Dow Jones average closing trading down substantially, 237 points today. The S&P 500 down 29. The NASDAQ was down 77. And our KSL weather, it's hot, but clouds are building up. Possible thunderstorm ahead. That's next. KSL News Time, 2:31.
Start your days with knowledgeable, friendly voices telling you about the latest news and weather out there.
Hi, this is Tim Hughes and Amanda Dixon.
In the business of waking you up each morning from 5 to 9.
On KSL News Radio.
Smart, connected, modern. Discover life-enhancing independent living services at Trio Orem. Joy isn't just for the young, it's for the young at heart. Trio's signature programs provide a unique approach to wellness, bringing living well and well-being to life. Trio is reimagining retirement to deliver delight in every detail. To learn more, contact Trio Orem at 801-434-8000 or visit treeoorem.com.
Ron had a tax problem he just couldn't handle on his own.
I owed the IRS taxes for over 5 years, but I didn't have any money to pay the taxes.
Those years cost him dearly.
Most of it was fees and interest. It was horrible.
Ron finally called in the pros.
I called Optima Tax Relief, and boy, am I happy I did.
The leading tax resolution firm, Optima, is A+ rated by the Better Business Bureau. They've resolved over $1 billion for their clients. Ron was overjoyed.
They settled my account with IRS. I was ecstatic. They are a lifesaver. They are. I am so happy.
Take Ron's advice and call Optima now for a free consultation.
Yeah, don't do like I did and wait. Call Optima Tax Relief. Do it now. You'll be ecstatic like me.
Call 800-343-6460. 800-343-6460. 800-343-6460.
Optima Tax Relief.
Testimonial from an actual client. Some restrictions apply. For complete details, please visit OptimaTaxRelief.com.
Here's a question. Do you wear dentures? At Grandpa's Dental, you can trade in your floppy dentures and get $2,000 towards an implant-supported solution. You know, they say the older you get, the more you need your teeth. Well, chewing your food isn't a luxury. And taking a bite out of a nice, juicy steak, well, it takes teeth. At Grandpa's Dental, they have over 10,000 restorations under their belt, and it's always affordable. When you walk into one of their 3 locations, you're family, period. At Grandpa's Dental, they live their family legacy by building lasting relationships through state-of-the-art services. So if you want to stop the flop and actually eat foods you can chew, trade in your dentures at Grandpa's Dental for $2,000 toward your implant solution. Schedule your free consultation at grandpasdental.com today. That's grandpasdental.com.
Traffic and weather together brought to you by Granite Credit Union's High Yield Savings Certificates. Here's Ricky Meese.
Salt Lake County freeways rolling along, no problems there. A little bit of slowing southbound I-15 approaching Willard Bay. But we also have debris in the road northbound 5600 west at the 21st South Freeway Junction. Right now, crews are blocking a center lane of traffic to get that cleared. Emergencies don't wait, and neither do the experts at Big Brothers Home Services. Available 24/7 for emergency plumbing, draining, cleaning, backups, and leaks, because they do more. Ricky Meese in the KSL Traffic Center.
KSL weather, we can see more afternoon thunderstorms today, but it'll be hot with a high around 99. It dries out through the rest of the week with highs climbing to 103 by Sunday, and there's a chance for more rain Monday and Tuesday. 97 degrees, partly cloudy right now at KSL News Radio, 102.7 FM, 1160 AM, and KSLNewsRadio.com. Your all-day companion for news.
Inside Sources.
Inside Sources.
America's voice of reason. Boyd Matheson on Utah's home for elevated conversation. Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
Well, the UFO whistleblower David Grush testified before Congress on UAPs, or unidentified aerial phenomenon. And he, along with others, made some pretty interesting, sometimes shocking, a little bit outlandish claims about crashed objects containing technology that we can't explain, objects containing different kinds of material. The interesting thing to me, however, is that Congress has tried to find out more information about UFOs or UAPs from the Pentagon, and they've been denied access, creating frustration and uncertainty and even a whole lot of conspiracy theories. So the question for me is, what did we learn from the hearing yesterday? More importantly, what comes next? And what authority should Congress have in terms of getting this kind of information that may impact national security from the Pentagon, from the military, and from others? Joe Khalil is the Washington correspondent for News Nation and joins us now. Joe, welcome to the program.
Thank you. Always good to be here.
So we had some people joking that all of the Hunter Biden escapades yesterday were really to distract the country from the hearing on UAPs and UFOs, to just further the conspiracy theories. But there were some important things and some important moments. As you watched that and took that in yesterday, what were some of the key takeaways for you?
Yeah, well, first I should say some people thought it was the opposite, that UFO hearings were a distraction for the Hunter Biden. Yeah, conspiracies all around, all the way you like them. So there were a couple of really big, important takeaways. Some of these were not new, but the fact that they were read into the congressional record and, done in this public way under oath is a really big deal. So I think the biggest thing is the claims that David Grush made. He was asked point blank, do you think the Pentagon, the government, has possession of, UAPs or UFOs? He said yes, based on interviews he's done with 40 different people who claim to have worked on these programs that he alleges exist. Programs that, we've retrieved these crashed UFOs and have tried to reverse engineer them. Now, that sounds very far-fetched to many people. Totally, understand that. But these are credible witnesses, and the other two guys were military pilots who themselves have seen UFOs in the air as they were flying, and their stories are actually backed up by the military and by the Pentagon, who confirm, yes, what they saw because it wasn't just their eyes, but we picked these things up on radar. And the reason they are saying they think these things are not of earthly origin, in other words, maybe extraterrestrial, is the way that they moved. And again, the military acknowledges we don't know how these things are moving because they seem to defy our laws of physics. It's like this craft they're seeing that goes up, and down and side to side, and these motions that American capacity, as far as we know, cannot do. And then they take off at speeds that would literally kill a human pilot because it's just too fast for a human to withstand. So for those reasons, there's the speculation. And I think all of that coming forward in a congressional setting was really unprecedented and kind of historic yesterday.
Yeah, and I think that's important. You raised some really important points, Joe. One, on the record, into the congressional record, I think is super important. I think the fact that these are very credible people, and not only in terms of what they saw, but what has also been admitted in terms of, we do know that this is legitimate in terms of what they saw. Again, not knowing exactly what it is a completely different discussion for another day, but I think this process is really important. I know Senator Marco Rubio on the Senate side has also been quite adamant in terms of making sure that Congress is briefed on this kind of information. Give us a sense, one, how has the Pentagon responded since the hearing, and what do you expect to see next in terms of this kind of conversation?
Yeah, we've heard nothing from the Pentagon since the hearing. We have heard from the National Security Council because they hold regular briefings. We got a question into them, actually. And, it's Admiral John Kirby who says, people were asking, why isn't the NSC, the White House, taking this more seriously? And he actually shot that down pretty quickly yesterday and said, we are. He said, absolutely. If you think that President Biden isn't concerned about things, if we're not concerned about things flying around in our airspace that seem to be, light years beyond what we have in terms of technology, then you're crazy. He said these things are absolutely concerning to the United States and to our national security. But he says we shouldn't be jumping to conclusions about what they are. And so that was the response from Kirby, from National Security Council, and more generally our defense posture when it comes to these things. So we actually did hear that from the witnesses too, all three. I mean, they make allegations that go beyond what Kirby said. They are saying, these are non-human craft, right? But they also, all three were asked, could this be a national security issue? All three unanimously said absolutely yes. Yeah. So in terms of that, I think the Pentagon, whatever they're not acknowledging, I think there is an acknowledgement at least that if it's truly we don't know what these things are or where they come from, that is a big concern. Yeah, and I think that's an important part. To me, this is one of those real think again things. This is something that you can either just dismiss out of hand as conspiracy theory, crazy talk, nor can you say we absolutely know what it is, because I think we have to suspend judgment because we just don't know. The question is what is the role of Congress in all of this? And so what do you expect to see next in terms of the House, or what do you expect to see from Senator Rubio and others on the Senate side? Yeah, a couple of things moving forward that we know we're going to see. One is more hearings. I confirmed with the House Oversight Committee Chairman, James Comer, yesterday, who said we're going to have more field hearings, so maybe not even in Washington or at the Capitol. They may be other places around the country, maybe places where there have been sightings or I don't know, but there's going to be field hearings, so expect more of what we saw yesterday. The second thing is there is discussion about establishing a brand new committee here in Congress that would exclusively be for looking into UFOs and UAPs. That would be unprecedented, but really important in this issue because it would mean they would have subpoena power. If there are things the Pentagon is holding back, this group would be very motivated, as you can imagine, to issue subpoenas and legally hold the Pentagon's feet to the fire and say, we know you have videos of these things. We know you have pictures of these things. We know you have documentation. Give them to us, or we will, with the force of law, mandate that you hand these things over. So we may see that very soon. There are certainly calls for that. I'm told it's going to be a call for Speaker Kevin McCarthy ultimately to make, but he's getting pushed to do that. Yeah. And the last thing I think we're going to see is people like David Grush, who was one of these witnesses that came forward with the most sort of fantastical claims here. But he says he has evidence to back all this up. He says he knows where the bodies are buried, in some cases quite literally bodies, right, of extraterrestrials is his claim. He says he can identify where these things are being housed. So members of Congress, he couldn't say publicly at the hearing yesterday, but he said openly, I will tell you in a classified setting, members of Congress privately. They are going to be taking steps to get that done and to bring him into what's known as a SCIF, a secure private location where classified material is allowed to be shared and discussed. So I think what we're going to get are all three of those things I just mentioned very soon. And I think the ball is just really beginning to roll on like the momentum in Congress to explore this issue.
Yeah, the hearing yesterday definitely was not the beginning of the end. I think it really was just the end of the beginning when it comes to this conversation about UFOs and UAPs. And as you pointed out, Joe, national security interest that everybody should be thinking about, regardless of what your beliefs may be about what it is or what it isn't. But there are some things that we definitely need to find out what it is and how it might impact us moving forward.
And if I could add just add one more thing, I think it's really important to know fact versus fiction here, because as a reporter, I'm also naturally very skeptical about these claims, right? And I think we need to separate the idea of like little green men driving around in flying saucers versus what is actually real and provable. What we know, what is fact, what is indisputable, is that these things are out there, whatever they are. We do have images of them. The military has now provided and made public video on their radar and actual pictures in the sky. So there are things that are out there flying that seem to do what we are incapable of doing or making. That is now like fact and established.
Yeah.
But there are a lot of questions about what they are, where they come from. That's where the work still needs to be done that we need to confirm.
Yeah, and I think yesterday was an important statement of those facts, and having those put into the congressional record in an official hearing, I think is a very important beginning in all of that conversation. Joe Khalil, Washington correspondent for News Nation, thanks as always for joining us. And we're going to go ahead and step aside for one last commercial break. And when we come back, some final thoughts on Inside Sources here on KSL News Radio.
Guys, did you know your testosterone level impacts your energy, libido, sleep, weight, hair loss, mood, and even ED? And right now, Revive Men's Health Salt Lake City will check your testosterone for free. They've helped thousands of men since 2011 feel and perform better. They're so confident they can help you, they even guarantee it. Schedule your free testosterone test, exam, and consultation today. Call 801-263-7777. That's 801-263-7777. Or visit ReviveMen'sHealth.com.
Now, I have a confession to make. When I saw the roster for this year's productions at Hale Center Theater, they all look great. But the one that jumped off the page for me, it's a family favorite for the right family, and it was Newsies. It is absolutely delightful. But here's the bad news. It is completely sold out. But there's a silver lining. The good news is Hale Center Theater is adding 4 p.m. matinees. Newsies is running through August 26th. If you thought you had missed your chance to see this great, enthusiastic production at Hale Center Theater, there's still time to get your matinee tickets. And don't forget, too, just around the corner is Catch Me If You Can, Around the World in 80 Days, and just in time for the holiday season, Elf, the musical. It's time to go to hct.org. Lock down your tickets, especially get your tickets for Newsies. That's hct.org, Hale Center Theater.
When you crash your car, you get it fixed. When your computer crashes, you get a new one. But what will you do if you've been saving in a 401k or an IRA and the market crashes? If you're in your 30s or 40s, you'll be just fine. But if you're in or near retirement, you could be in trouble. Mike Stevens and his team at Capital Wealth Advisors are here to help. They can run a risk analysis to see if you're too heavily invested in the market. Don't let the ups and downs of Wall Street control you or your retirement dreams. Call 801-210-5500 today. to schedule your risk analysis with Mike Stevens and the team at Capital Wealth Advisors. That's 801-210-5500. Crashes happen. Question is, are you ready? Capital Wealth Advisors, 801-210-5500. Investing involves risk, including the potential loss of principal. Advisory services offered through Capital Wealth Advisors, LLC, a state of Utah registered investment advisor.
Attorney Joe Cordell.
Business owners and professionals face special challenges in divorce court. In addition to everything else going on, they have to contend with allegations that they are earning more than they are, coupled with claims on their business or practice itself. Clients with assets depend on their divorce lawyer's skills in these matters, and that's why it's so important to hire someone that has those skills.
Schedule an appointment with one of Cordell & Cordell's Salt Lake City area attorneys. 910 West Legacy Center Way, Suite 120, Midvale, Utah, 84047.
Did you know you can get your prescriptions for less at your local pharmacy? You can with GoodRx. It's the free app that can save you money on your medications. Just search for your prescription, choose the pharmacy and the price that works best for you, and then show your GoodRx coupon to your pharmacist at the drop-off counter. GoodRx works at over 70,000 pharmacies, including Walmart, Rite Aid, and Walgreens, and it works whether you have insurance or not. It's easy to save. Next time you drop off your prescription, check GoodRx. To start saving today, go to GoodRx.com. GoodRx is not insurance.
This summer is sizzling, and Bullfrog Spas has summer fun that your whole family will love. For 5 days only, you'll find big factory store discounts, plus a rebate up to $2,500 on our beautiful, energy-efficient, and fully customizable Bullfrog Spas hot tubs and swim spas. Don't wait. This sizzling summer savings event ends Monday. Find your nearby Bullfrog Spas factory store at bullfrogfactorystores.com.
Bullfrog Spas. Peaceful body, peaceful mind, peaceful home.
Tim and Amanda.
You know, we've been doing this, 30 years, Tim? We know that the news can be heavy. We know that it can be difficult sometimes to listen to or understand. But that doesn't mean that we're supposed to live in that down place every day. We learn the news, we're educated so we can take care of our families. But then, you know what? We go out and have a good day.
Well, I think both of us come from the standpoint, we have families, we have kids that are coming up different ages. Yours are younger than mine. Mine are grown adults, but we always try and look for the bright side, I think, because we all want to have that in our lives.
And it's there. There is a bright side.
There is a bright side out there, and so we look for those opportunities each day to hopefully send that message to you, even if it's not directly, in words, that at least in sentiment, things are going to be okay.
Do you know what I like to tell people? The news is the exception, not the rule. So if there's violence in the news, that's the exception. The rule is most of us are safe and happy and doing okay.
Amen.
Utah's Morning News between 5 and 9 on KSL News Radio.
With the three things you need to know this hour, I'm Dan Bomas. First, Clearfield police have arrested a woman suspected of stealing an SUV earlier this week. They still haven't located the little dog that was in it. Second, an Air Force investigation has determined the cause of an F-35 crash at Hill Air Force Base last year. And third, the head of the United Nations says the era of global boiling has arrived as new heat records are being set around the world. Right now, 97 degrees, partly cloudy in Salt Lake City, and back to Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
Hear elevated conversation on crucial issues. Boyd Matheson on Inside Sources.
Welcome back to Inside Sources here on KSL News Radio. It's great to be with you today, as always. I am Boyd Matheson, and as we round out the program today, we had a really interesting conversation earlier with Mark Toth talking about everything going on in Israel right now. And current Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, of course, has been going through, quote, reforms as it relates to the Supreme Court of Israel. And that has sparked protests that have covered the last several weeks. There was a vote in the Knesset in terms of advancing that proposal, those reforms. And there's just a whole host of things going on there that has me thinking about our own constitution, thinking about what's going on in Israel in terms of their constitution, and what it means to get a little more specific and a little more precise. Really interesting, Benjamin Netanyahu appeared with Wolf Blitzer. He'll have a full interview later on today, but some of the excerpts that have been coming out, Netanyahu refused to say if he would abide by any potential Supreme Court ruling striking down his controversial judicial reform law as Israelis agonize over a looming showdown between their government and the court. So Netanyahu said, quote, what you're talking about is a situation, a potential situation, where in American terms, the United States Supreme Court would take a constitutional amendment and say it's unconstitutional. That's the kind of spiral that you're talking about. Netanyahu continued, I hope we don't get to that. Again, this was with his interview with Wolf Blitzer on CNN. He warned that the country could enter uncharted territory. So the law that has been passed by the Knesset, that's the ruling body there in Israel, would limit the power of Israel's Supreme Court. So it's an amendment to one of Israel's basic laws. So basic laws are what they have in Israel. They don't have a written constitution. So Netanyahu also pointed to debate in the U.S. over its own Supreme Court. He said, you have internal debate in the United States right now about the powers of the Supreme Court, about whether it's abusing its power and whether or not it should be curtailed. So Netanyahu questioned, does that make the American democracy not a democracy? Does that make the debate unworthy? Does that make the issue a symbol of the fact that you're moving to some dictatorship personally? So really interesting words there from Netanyahu. Again, you can see more of that on CNN coming up later today. Important conversation. And this is the interesting debate inside of Israel. Has the Supreme Court of Israel overstepped its bounds? Are they now legislating from the bench? Something that we certainly do not approve of here in the United States of America. We do always have conversations and debate and sometimes outright arguments over the role of the Supreme Court. Do we need more justices on the Supreme Court to, quote, balance it out? Should the Supreme Court act? We've seen situations like with the Obama administration and the Affordable Care Act, where Chief Justice John Roberts basically made a few little maneuvers and, in essence, sort of rewrote the law in order to make it constitutional. And so those are all great questions. Those are all important debates. I think one of the things that is interesting is the fact that Israel doesn't have a written constitution, but there actually was a plan for one 75 years ago. And then they never quite got around to it. So they went with this basic laws. That was supposed to be kind of a stopgap, sort of a little page marker or holder. But they never quite got to that. So they went with these 13 laws known as the basic laws, and that's kind of what's been governing Israel ever since. And now we're getting to this stage where it's getting harder to just hold all of that together. Again, on one side, you have people arguing that unelected judges are deciding what's reasonable according to these basic laws in their own view versus what the Knesset, which is directly elected by the people. Others are saying, no, you're undermining the separation of powers by giving the Knesset too much power over the judiciary, and the Knesset being able to overturn what the Supreme Court of Israel, so to speak, has decided or done. Now, these are all important debates, and I think it's a great opportunity for us to reflect on where we are as a country. It's very easy. A lot of people on both sides of this argument have looked at Israel and said, oh, you know, if you could only be a little more like us. I don't think that's the way we should look at it. I think we should look in the mirror and say, what does it look like to be us? And more importantly, are we living up to the principles that not just that we profess to believe, but that the founders of this nation actually went through the hard work and heavy lifting of putting it on paper? And I do think there is great value in that pen-to-paper exercise, and not just for nations. I have often said and often taught that you really don't know what you think about a thing until you write it down. You can have ideas rumbling around in your head, but until you actually go through that discipline of putting it on paper, do you really get to the essence of what you think, come to an understanding of what you actually know, or really get a true sense of what you believe? And I actually think that's an important exercise, not just for nations, whether it's the United States or Israel or anyone else. I think it's actually an important exercise for each of us individually, because it forces us to actually take a harder look, a more disciplined look at who we are and what we profess to believe. It also gives us a very clear picture of how we're doing in living what we profess to believe. And often, I know for me, when I actually write about something that I think I believe or that I think I know or that I want to express, I often find that my own behavior may not be in alignment with what I profess to believe. And if you've ever had your back out of alignment, you know whenever there is not something in alignment, there's always a pain point. And we see that in relationships. We see that in individual lives. I see it in organizations all the time. And we actually see it in countries. When a country doesn't live up to what they profess to believe, when there's not an alignment, there's always a pain point. And so the exercise of a written constitution, whether it's for a country or whether it's for your own individual life or your marriage or your community, is an exercise worth having. Because again, I don't think we really know what we truly believe until we have the discipline to put it down on paper. Well, that wraps it up for us on Inside Sources today here on KSL News Radio. Great to be with you. I am Boyd Matheson, and as you go out into the world today, make sure you see something that inspires, say something that uplifts, and do something today that makes a difference.
KSL FM Midvale, KSL Salt Lake City. Listen on the KSL News Radio app and in your car at 102.7 FM.